Welcome to Maximizer 103 for Financial Advisors. In this training session, which is the third of three, we're going to start by looking at the word integration again, then we'll look at reporting and look at import and global edit, two of Maximizer's powerful advanced tools. We'll look at converting one entry to another, and then we'll take time to consider duplicates, and we'll also look at what the meaning of duplicates is in the context of breaking up and merging households. We'll take a quick run through the administrator module, especially for those of you who have Maximizer administrator responsibilities. Then we'll end by looking at the app directory, and of course, I'll remind you about the support services that we have to help you along your way. In Maximizer 101, we looked at using the word integration to create labels and envelopes. In this session, we're going to look at creating templates and more particularly putting merge codes into your contracts so that you can easily personalize your contracts to anybody in your database. I click on the word icon and I open up a Word document. You notice along the top here, there's my Maximizer ribbon. We looked at labels and envelopes, and this time we're going to look at inserting merge fields to actually create a document template. I enter the text here that I want, and then to personalize it, I begin here at Dear. I come to the merge icon. I click on the bottom part of it so that I can put in first name, put my mouse back here, put in a space, then come back and pick last name. Here, after yours truly, I can come back here to the merge icon, this time go to the top end, and instead of contact list, I'll select user. I'll have my mouse here, select my company, click insert, put the mouse back, a couple of spaces, and then insert my first name like that. Again, put the mouse there, click a space, and then put in my last name right beside it as well. And of course, if I like, I can click enter. Oh, look, I forgot to put my cursor in place there first before clicking enter. That ended up duplicating that particular merge field. So now I put my mouse there, I click a space, now I click enter, and put, for example, my phone number or my email address or whatever else I want to put in there. When I'm done, I click this close, but before I do, I'm going to show you one other neat thing. I'll scroll down, still within user, come down to today's date, select it, put my mouse up here at the top of the letter, and insert that merge field there. Now I'll close. I've effectively created a Word document that has merge fields that will capture information from any of the entries that I happen to be looking at over here. My first job now is to come up here and not click on template, but rather click on Save to Maximizer and create a new template. I'll click on that. I have to give this template a name. I'll keep it simple and just identify it with today's date. Instead of using asterisk, however, I put numbers there to pull this up to the top of the list of all the Word document templates that I've got in my template library. An asterisk will not be recognized if I try to pull it back into Word later. So that's why I use the numbers. I click OK, and that has now been saved. I'll close out of here for now. I'll select all these records because I'd like to include their information in this merged document. I'll come down to Administration and Template Library, and I will select Document Templates. And here's the template that I just created. In order to use it, I go back to my contact list, I click on the Word icon, I open up my Word document, click on the Maximizer ribbon, click on Template, select the template I just created, and click OK. And here it is again. Now what I want to do is preview this template to see what it's going to look like. So I click on Preview. This opens another Word document, and you can see that all of the merge fields have been correctly filled in for this first entry in my list over here. I can now also go to the next entry down and check again. Wendy Sullivan looks great. I can go through the whole of my list and make sure that I've got everything working as it should. When I'm satisfied, I close out of the preview screen, and now what I do is come over here and click here, Save Merged Files, and Send to Printer, Print Selected Entries. When I do this two-step process, not only do I print them, but I also save a copy to each of the entries over here as well. I think that's pretty straightforward. I'm going to close out of this now, and I'm going to go back over to the template library because I want to show you something else that could be very important for you, but which follows the same process that we've just walked through. I'm going to click on Add Template, and then I'm going to click on Select Files, And for our demonstration purposes, I'll pick this particular document right here. Again, I'll preface the name with zeros so that it comes to the top of the list. I'll leave full access public, read access public, put a description here if I need to, but I'll go ahead and click OK. And that document has now become part of my document template library. Now I go back to my contact list, click on the word icon to open up a Word document, and then I go to my Maximizer ribbon, and over here again, I click on Template. I bring up the document that I've put into my library, click OK, and now wherever I see one of these lines, I highlight it and replace it with a merge field. Again, I'll come and use the user list, and I'll put today's date into that particular space there by clicking Insert. I'll put my mouse there to space between the merge field and what comes after it. Under here, I will replace that line with, going back to the bottom part of the merge icon, I'll click Mr. and Ms., put my mouse there, space it, select first name, put my mouse in place and space it, and then insert last name. And again, put my mouse there and space so that I have a bit of room. A corporation organized and existing under, I fix a typo, under the laws of the province of, and I'll just do this as if it was in Canada if you don't mind. I'll come here again to my bottom merge field and I'll pick state, county, and province, and then I'll come down here and assume that I'm the publisher. So I'll go to the upper part of the merge field icon, change again over to user, and this time I'll put in my first name and insert, put my mouse in place, a space, and then my last name, insert, and again put my mouse there and put a space, and again under the province or state of, and this time of course I will select my state or province, click insert, and I think I should be good to go. So I can close my merge field dialog box, and I come over here to Maximizer, and this time when I click Save to Maximizer, I want to update an existing template. I click on that, select the template that I want to update, and click OK. Just for fun, once again I'll click Preview, and you can see that the merge fields have been filled in. You can follow this same process of going over to Administration and to the Template Library and adding in a document that you want to have populated by merge fields, then going back over to the contact list, opening the document, putting in the merge fields, and then as you saw, saving to Maximizer by updating an existing template. You can do it for as many documents as you need to. Plus, if you had an earlier version of Maximizer where you had our built-in editor and you had templates associated with that built-in editor, if you can copy and paste the contents of any one of those templates over into Word and then save that Word document to the new document template library, and then go through this process, you can recapture and repurpose all of your old templates without having to recreate them from scratch. Now let's take a look at the reports that we can generate from within Maximizer. When I click on Reports, you'll notice the first one is called a column report, which basically is the same as my export to Excel. The difference is that when I export my information to Excel, I have a lot more flexibility in how I work with that report subsequently. First of all, make sure that I'm using a column setup that reflects the information that I want to report on. Then I simply populate the window here with the entries I want to report on, and I click on Export to Excel. When this comes up for me, I click on Enable Editing, and you can see I'm working with a normal Excel spreadsheet. I can remove columns, I can move columns around, I can total up numerical columns, etc. And of course, I can save this document and forward it on to somebody to whom I have to give this report. My next report is a note report. As you can see, there are a number of different variables here that I can control, whatever suits my purposes. This is a particular report that has some utility, but you'll want to play with it a bit to see how it may be useful to you. The Consolidated Activity Report is a user-by-user report that allows you to report on specific date ranges or all dates, an update report, and indicates the notes you created, total appointments, total tasks for that particular time period. In this case, of course, I said all dates. You can also dig down through the details and see what the topic was for any given note that you're looking at. As with other reports like this, I can export this to Excel, to PDF, or to Word. The incoming versus outgoing calls report is a report we looked at already in a previous training session. This report is more like a management report because I can report on user or these other elements here. I can specify the date range or all dates and update the report. And a manager can look at the call activity of anybody under his or her responsibility. They can check outgoing calls or incoming calls. They can drill down to the details on a user-by-user basis and can drill down on the details on a call-by-call basis. The final type of report are Excel reports, either specifically the address book entries column report or all address book reports. This particular report requires you to use a specific column setup. You need to go to View, Column Setup, and select the default report view and click Use Now. That's because these reports are actually pivot table reports, and they're predicated upon having the 28 columns that are in this particular column setup. When I open this report, I click on Enable Editing, and then I also click on Enable Content. The data source, of course, is the Excel sheet that I had open here in my contact list. If you're familiar with pivot tables, everything that comes after here will be kind of second nature to you. If you're not familiar with pivot tables, you can always call our professional services folks and contract them to help you interpret this, use it, or extend its utility, or actually develop customized pivot tables for your own use. I'm going to return to the column setup I was using prior to this, so we can move on to our third segment, which involves importing from Excel sheets and global edit. Here we go. I deselect my records and come to Import and File Import. When I prepared this video tutorial on using the import tool, I used companies and contacts as the example for the import. And in that situation, the company is the unique identifier that links the company and its information to the contacts and their information. Because households are far more important to you than companies, I'm going to walk you through this process using households and contacts, and you'll see that the household will be the unique identifier that links all of the contacts to their parent household. Here's the Excel sheet that I'm going to use for this import. However, in order to make it work, I'm going to have to add some additional columns over here, rename some of them over here, and take all the contact information and pull it out of this area and put it over here. Let me show you what that looks like. As I said, I cut all of the contact information out of here, put it over here, copied over the contact city and contact province so that they were also associated with my contacts. And you'll notice now that I have household last name and first name and email address, contact last name, first name and email address, and contact city and province as well. But you'll notice also that the household name still exists here on the same line and is associated with each of the entries that are going to be my contacts. Now let's go ahead and walk through the import process. I begin by clicking here to start a new import. I then click here to select a file and bring up the Excel sheet that I'm going to use for importing. I tell Maximizer that this import will contain household information and the contacts that belong to them. I note that my first row is a header, ignore the rest, and click Next. I tell Maximizer to add new records and make updates to existing, and update only empty Maximizer fields with data from the import file, and click Next. Now I'm at the page where I have to take the fields that are going to be imported and match them against existing Maximizer fields. I'll ignore the first one on record type, but I'll click here to bring out the field selector box. I'll come over, expand the household area, select company to stand in for the household name. You'll notice that the highlight automatically moves to the next line, and that case will be last name for the household, and then first name, and so on with all the rest. After I've finished doing the household entries, I'm going to change over to contact and basic fields and do the same thing there. When I'm done, I double-click anywhere to retire the field selector box, and this is what this looks like. My next thing over here is to match on one field out of the household group and one field at least out of the contact group in order to tell Maximizer how to check to make sure that these don't exist already in the database. I'll use the household name to match here for household, and I will choose last name, and first name for the contact. It's important that I selected the household name here because, again, that's the unique identifier that connects the household with its contacts. The field action over here, I've already told Maximizer to add when empty. That suits me okay for this example, so I'll leave that as you see it. And here under Field Format, I have a chance to change how these entries are imported. I like to use Convert to Title Case so that the first letter of each word is capitalized and the rest are in lowercase. But for email addresses, for example, I prefer to bring them in as imported. When I'm importing the two-letter code for state and province, I always select Convert to Uppercase. You may have noticed that I deliberately left BC in the Excel spreadsheet in lowercase so that I could have Maximizer automatically make that change for me. And that's what this looks like when I'm done. I click Next. On this page, Maximizer gives me a chance to review everything that I have done. I can also choose to create a new list, and this will be the title of that import. And down here, I can save this format of the import as a template. I'll go ahead and leave this as the same name as my Excel sheet, and I'll click Save. What this really means is that if I ever come back to Maximizer with another Excel sheet that looks the same and has the same kind of data in it, I can choose to use a template for the import rather than going through the whole process of matching fields, etc. When I'm satisfied, I click Finish, and Maximizer proceeds to try for the import. When the import finished, we notice that 6 of the entries were successfully imported, but 7 were skipped. Let's check first on the ones that were skipped. When I click here, Maximizer gives me an Excel sheet that tells me in the last column exactly why these records were skipped. On the individual level, the role was not imported because the record exists and there were no fields that required an update, and ditto for the contact as well. In other words, when I did this import, I obviously didn't check first to make sure that these entries were not already in Maximizer. Now that becomes part of our subject of discussion in our next major segment of the program. When I click on those that succeeded, Maximizer takes me to the contact list and shows me the 6 entries that were successfully imported. To check the complete list, I'm going to select the households, and I'm going to go to Search and Retrieve Contacts. And there we go, the same list that we had from our Excel sheet. When I sort by record type, you can see the 5 households and the 8 associated contacts. Just for fun, I'm going to use this same list to show you how to work with Global Edit. So I'm going to select everybody on the list, and I'm going to change everybody from Vancouver to, let's say, Chicago, and state and province from BC to Illinois. I go to Edit, Global Edit. I select the field I want to change, which is City. I see it recognized down here. I click OK. I want to replace with the value Chicago. I'm going to add another field to edit, and this time, of course, I will pick State and Province, and OK. And again, I'll replace, and this time with Illinois. I can add a note to each entry just so I can keep track of what I've done with those entries. And I can click over details for full access, read access if I want to. Doesn't make a lot of sense in this context. So I'll leave that note there. I've got the changes in hand, and I'll click OK. I get this warning from Maximizer. You're about to modify 13 contact list entries. This is a chance to rethink if you want to make sure this is actually what you want to do. In this case it is, so I'll click OK. Up here, Maximizer shows me the progress on this edit. And when the edit is done, I can click here to view global edit results, and I'll see these fields change. And there we go. The world revolves around Chicago, Illinois, for this group of 13 entries. In our next segment, we're going to look at converting one entry to another, preventing, finding, and resolving duplicates, and we're going to overlay all of this with some notes about breaking up and merging households. I'm going to simplify this by only using the Samantha and Hunter Kirby household. Suppose Samantha decided she wanted to leave that household and go out on her own. We could highlight her, go to Edit, Convert Contacts to Households, get the warning you're about to do this, and click OK. Would you like to use the existing address? I say yes in this case, although obviously she would move to a different address. You will note that we now have a separate Samantha Kirby household. If we go back to the original one and hover over here on the left, we notice that we only have Hunter remaining in that household. Here's the problem with breaking up a household using this method. If I look at the original household here and I check over under accounts, you notice that I have an account both for Hunter and another one up here for Kirby. If I go to the Samantha Kirby household, you will notice that her account did not follow her. Similarly, under the original household, there was a client service case for each of them, and again, when we go to the Samantha Kirby household, we notice that nothing followed her when we broke her away and created her own household for her. This situation is of course easy to reverse because we simply highlight Samantha Kirby and go to Edit, Convert Household to Contact, tell Maximizer to search for Samantha and Hunter, identify the household when it comes up and click OK. And when the process is finished and we hover over here, we see we have both Hunter and Samantha back in the same household where they began. And of course, both accounts and both client service plans are there where they started from as well. If you have a household that is going to break up, there's a better way to do it so that the accounts and client service plans remain with the person to whom they are attached. To do that, we highlight or select the original household and go to Edit and duplicate the current entry. Maximizer asks us to confirm if accounts and client service plans, as well as other things, are going to be copied from the selected entry to the new entry. We click OK. Let's assume that Samantha left Hunter, in which case we can rename this original household as just the Hunter household. And we can rename the new household as just the Samantha household. Now let's just make the two households our selected list to keep things simple. When I look at the Hunter Kirby household, I notice that Samantha is still there. I make an adjustment to this by putting square brackets around Samantha's name and clicking Save. From now on, when I look at the Hunter Kirby household, I can see that there's Hunter Kirby in the household, and look at that, there used to be a Samantha Kirby there. This allows me to take a look at both accounts and client service plans for the original household to see what still remains. And then when I go over to the Samantha Kirby household, I can make the adjustment here to Hunter, and I can either delete Hunter or I can put square brackets around him as well to keep track of the fact that he was originally tied to her. In the notes field, for either one of these households, I can now make mention of the fact that Samantha used to be tied to Hunter and Hunter used to be tied to Samantha. This allows me to maintain the history that's behind either one of these households. And now when I look at the Samantha Kirby household and go to Accounts, I can see the account here that's in progress with Samantha. If I want to, if there's no overlap between these two here, I could always delete this one. And by the same token, I could go over to the Hunter Kirby household and under Accounts, I could take a look at the one that relates to Samantha, and I could delete that one if there is no tie over between that one and Hunter. Now when I look at the household for Samantha, I see the accounts that have followed her. When I look at the Hunter household, I see the accounts that have followed him, and I can do the same thing for client service. Whether you make those two deletions that I've just done, or whether you keep those in place for historical purposes, is obviously a judgment call that you as a financial advisor or an assistant to a financial advisor will have to make. Now let's suppose down the road, these two good people decide to get back together again. And once again, since Samantha left the original household, we'll make the simple assumption that she's coming back to Hunter. What we will do is combine these two households, and this is the identical process we use when we're combining duplicates if we happen to find them elsewhere in our contact list. Under Edit, I can come down here to combine selected entries, but obviously to make that work, I have to select the appropriate entries. Now that they're both selected, I have to choose the one and highlight the one that will be the target into which the source will be combined. As I said, in this case, I'll consider the Hunter Kirby household to be the target and Samantha to be the one that is coming back into the target household. I go to Edit, Combine Selected Entries is available to me, and I click on it. Maximizer asks me if I want to create an alternate mailing address for the source. Well, if Samantha went out and bought her own condo and they've decided to keep that together as an investment property, then yes, it would be a good idea to keep that check mark there. Maximizer also suggests that I may want to delete the source entries after merging. I always recommend not doing that, and instead allow the merge to proceed, and then check afterwards to make sure that everything from the source entry that you want to keep has been successfully moved over into the target entry. I'll click OK, and when the merge is complete, I deselect the two entries, I check the Hunter Kirby household, come over to the left here, and I notice that Hunter's there and Samantha is there. Also, the two versions of them that were square bracketed out in their respective households have shown up as well. Really, all that's telling me is that everything that was in the Samantha Kirby household has moved over into the Hunter one. And I can confirm that by coming over here to the notes window, ask to see all the notes, and I have multiple notes for everything because things were duplicated when they were separated and they were combined or added to each other when they came back together. So I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a thing that's a bit annoying about this, but it's not that big a deal. I'll just take out one of those notes by Hunter, one of those notes for her, and I'll take out, well, since I know what was going on with this, I can probably take out more of these if I want. And I'm left with a note by Hunter before the breakup, a note by Samantha, and a note for each of them that the city was changed to Chicago, etc. Of greater importance is coming over to accounts and seeing that I have both of the accounts back in place where they belong. Similarly, under client service, I have both of the client service plans again back in that same household. Since I'm satisfied that all the information has come over from Samantha's household, I can delete that and then go to Search, Retrieve Contacts. And for the Hunter household, I now have Hunter and Samantha plus their square bracketed names here as well. If nothing further was done with these two entries that had their square brackets around them, then I'm probably quite safe to go ahead and right-click and delete those two and return, and then rename this household to the Samantha and Hunter household as it was before. One more note before we move on. When you combine two entries, values in basic fields and user-defined fields in the source will not overwrite values in the target. This is one more important reason why we check the transfer of source data before deleting source entries. Now let's talk about the regular duplicate process very quickly, just to cover off some things you'll want to be aware of. Obviously, the easiest way to prevent entering duplicates into your database is whenever you have somebody you're going to enter into the database, search for them first. If they show up, then you know that they're there already. If they don't, you're fairly comfortable in going ahead and putting them into the database. If I want to check to see if there are duplicates, I put as many entries into my main window as I want, and then for example here, I might sort by the last name and go to Search and find duplicates in List. And Maximizer will isolate those for me. Obviously, all these are not duplicates, they all belong there, and that's a decision that you always have to make when you encounter what appear to be duplicates. They might simply be entries that are at different locations, etc., but have the same name, or they might genuinely be duplicates. I've already shown you how to merge them if they are duplicates, but there's also something else you can do to help prevent duplicates. And that's a nice segue into our next segment, which is where we consider the administrator module. We'll take a look at duplicates, but we'll also look quickly at users, categories, date last contacted, and auditing. I go to Administration and click on Administrator. Here in the Administrator module, we can ignore user-defined fields and key field lists because we've discussed them in previous sessions. I'm going to go directly to the contact list under Preferences. And this, by the way, is the first place where we can check for categories. If I need values other than the ones that are here, I simply click on Add New Value to add to this list. And here's where I come for duplicate checking. I click Modify, and I put a check mark here, check for duplicates when adding contact entries. Maximizer has prepared 3 different duplicate checklists, each of which has fields identified with it that Maximizer can be instructed to check against. Having none in this third list is equivalent to unchecking this box here for checking for duplicates. But if I'm working with duplicate checklist 1 and I do not have a check mark here for allowing partial matches, then Maximizer will check this field and this field and this field to determine whether or not the entry I'm trying to put into the database is or is not a duplicate. This process works for entries that you are manually putting into Maximizer, but it does not work for lists that you are importing into Maximizer, so keep that in mind. If I put a check mark here for allow partial match, what I'm doing is giving Maximizer permission to declare an entry a duplicate, even if it does not match everything in this field and everything in this field. And then finally, sometimes you will want to allow duplicates to be put into your database for one reason or another. And here's where you can specify who is allowed to do that. We generally recommend that you create a security group called duplicate entry and allow the members of that group to allow duplicates into the database. We'll click Save and take a look at Date Last Contacted. If I click here to modify options, I need to make a choice as to which of these activities can be considered as an actual touch on a client so that I can have Maximizer automatically update the Date Last Contacted field for me. When I've made my choices, I click Save. Besides categories here, you can come down to System Fields and open up this field for Note and File categories and take a look at the categories that are in here for each one of these titles and make changes as you feel necessary. In addition, you can click the plus button here and go to this list of categories, and these are the categories that are associated with products and services when you're looking at accounts and customer service plans. Click on this heading here when you want to invoke auditing. Click Edit Audit Settings and make a choice as to fields, notes, and files for which you may want to maintain an audit trail. Click Save. You'll notice that the log file of changes made in the course of auditing will grow relatively quickly over time, so you can instruct Maximizer when to delete the logs older than 10 months, days, or years, and delete them. You can also look at each of these modules in turn, specify the date range, specify all users or specific users, and generate an audit report. This report will show you the date something was changed, who made the change, what kind of an action they took, insert, modify, or delete. They'll show you the object, the entry, and the field that were affected, and will also show you the changed value. This can be offloaded to Excel if you want to keep it. When you want to give someone permission to view the audit trail, click on Users, select the user, click on Access Rights, and modify user access settings. Over here on the right-hand side, scroll down and make sure there's a check mark right in here next to Read Audit Log. When that box is checked, that user will now be able to see the Audit tabbed following window. As you can see, this is where you control a user's ability to modify or delete entries in Maximizer. Over on this side, under Privileges, we recommend not allowing new users access to Global Edit. Here, under User Roles, most users will end up serving as Client Service Reps or Sales Reps, rather than Client Service Manager or Sales Manager or System Administrator, which is what you are if you have access to this whole area and the responsibility for managing users' permissions, privileges, and roles. When you have done what you need to here, click Save Settings. Use this tab here if you want to add a user to any of your existing security groups or teams, and when you're done, click Save to keep all your changes. When you do need to add a new user, click Add, and then to shortcut the process, select a user who already has the same basic properties that you want your new user to have. Click OK. Give your new user an ID, fill out the rest of the information as seems appropriate, make sure there's a valid email address here, double check the access rights you're giving them, and consider any groups and teams to which you want to add them. When you're done, click Save, and you will notice that Julie has been sent login information by email. Click OK, and Julie is now officially a member of your Maximizer team. In our final segment, we're going to take a quick look at the app directory, and we simply come over here and click on App Directory. To take advantage of an app in the directory, simply highlight the one you're interested in and click More. Here's where you can read the setup guide or go ahead and get it now. If you already have this one installed, this uninstall button will not be grayed out, and you can click on it if you change your mind and want to uninstall that particular app. When you click on Get It Now, you'll be able to install the no-cost connector between Maximizer and the application. If you want greater functionality than what that connector allows for, please contact our professional services team who can be contracted to help you out with that. And remember to keep your eye on this space because we are constantly increasing the number of applications that you can synchronize with to extend the utility of your maximizer. Now let me review the support resources that are available to you. I'll go back to my contact list and remind you of all these little links that we have in different places in the product, which will take you to a YouTube video that will help you with whatever you happen to be working on at the moment. In addition, you can come up here and click on our Resource Center, go to General Help, Video Tutorials, and proceed through to YouTube, where you can review all of our video tutorials in the same sequence that they're presented to you in Maximizer 101, 102, and 103. And of course, you can go through to our website at www.maximizer.com, go to Resources and Help Center, and click on Customer Support to bring up this form where you can give us your name, email, where you are from, and a synopsis of the problem that we can help you with, and submit this, and we'll get back to you right away. You can call us at this number here in North America, this number here in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and this number in Australia and New Zealand. And of course, over here, we have our chat bubble, which when you click on it, allows you to connect to one of our customer service specialists for a conversation that can help you answer probably any problem that you can come up with. Just remember that we are fiercely committed to helping you be 100% successful with your maximizer. Thank you for attending our training, and bye for now.